Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Altacast. Today is going to be a bit of a different one. Uh, Joel is currently away on taking a bit of a break with his family, so he's not here to do the Altacast with me. I forgot about that, so I didn't really talk to anyone else about the topic. Uh, Usually, Joel and I are level-headed enough that I can just say out a topic and then we can go. I didn't want to enforce someone into that position today. Um, One topic that I did consider speaking about was combat trials and what me and Sol are doing. But I figured that if we get our teeth sunken into this topic a little bit more by being a bit further in development, then I think we'll have more to talk about, that we'll be more excited. Um, at this current juncture, I'm implementing the art, which means that we're starting to see what shape these combat trials will take place. Sol is iterating a little bit on the design, and I think as we start to merge those two things and we see them both play a role together, we'll have a more thorough Altacast that will represent the experience that you will have more so than what I can currently say at the moment. Which means that today I want to talk about something a little bit more abstract, something that's perhaps more open for discussion with you as the community more than anything. And that's the role of different genres in the Township Tale. The one in particular that I wanted to talk about was horror. And I think horror is a good way for me to kind of set the mood of how we think these different genres can play a role. In town, everything is peaceful and nice, and outside in the wilderness and in the caves, things take on a bit of more of an action adventure. And then at night, we see a little bit of horror with the presence of the phantoms. So, yeah, let's talk about spooky things. But before we do that, let's update on what everyone's doing. So, Cosmetics team is making cosmetics for this upcoming Halloween season. First outfits are going to roll out in a couple days from when this is released, so hope you'll enjoy them. Some outfits from last year are going to be returning. Optimization team is doing optimization, nothing new there, and Joel is continuing his work on housing. We're making pretty good strides in that. One of the things that we're really trying to lock down on, and where we're spending a lot of time focusing on doing the correct amount of R&D, is how the interactions play out for house building, particularly with some of the resources required to build a house. For those of you who know the game well, the Township Tale is a very physical experience. And we want to see how we can bring this pillar into the house building experience, whilst at the same time balancing the fun aspect of it. I think right now the consensus is mostly that housing is going to be quite an involved task. It's going to be something that requires, if you can have a team of people helping you make it, it's going to be a lifesaver, I think, particularly for larger scale projects. And housing will still, I'll reiterate that housing is going to take a time to come out. I haven't personally started doing any of the art for it, so there's that aspect of it, and on top of that, there's many other things surrounding house building that need to get done that I haven't started development yet either. For this Q&A, I'm not going to answer too many housing questions, depending on the quality of the questions that I find. Primarily so that we can really just have so that we can talk about other things for a little bit. If you're interested in housing, me and Joel talked about it last Altacast. In the Q&A section, we kind of went over some of the commonly asked questions for housing, so be sure to look at that. And yes, and Timo, who's the last person I haven't talked about, he is currently on a bit of a personal break as well. His is going to last a bit longer than Joel's, but he's going to be having he's kind of dropping in and out to do some of the important stuff, like making sure that we're all okay with updates, and doing a bit of web server maintenance things that are just a bunch of back-end semantics and quality of life things for us to to help the game operate. Okay, so that covers everybody. Let's talk about horror or other genres if I can come up with some on the fly. So last year, Victor and I released out Phantoms. We released Phantoms into the world of a Township Tale. These phantoms come out at night, and they're this spooky being. And they came at a really, it was a very lucky accident that we were able to get them done. So the way this story goes is, last year, Victor and I were working on a bunch of different features. And it so happened that at the point at which October was coming up, we were thinking, okay, how are we, can we, Victor and I have time now, can we do something maybe spooky for Halloween, for the Halloween month? And particularly to release into the Halloween month, not something that's a seasonal, that only stays in October. We wanted something that lasts the whole game. So we threw a bunch of ideas around. Some ideas are fantastic ideas. They're super cool, little higher fidelity than what the Phantom is, despite the Phantom actually having some very unique, spooky lights just turned on. Let me turn them off because they're gonna mess up my lighting. Yeah, speaking of ghosts, grief. Last year we had the Halloween portion of the. God, I'm not completely forgotten. Yeah, so the Phantoms, when we released them, or when we started working on them, Victor and I said to each other, okay, we've got 2 weeks, to make this feature from nothing. We didn't even have it concepted. We just thought, hey, let's try and make a ghost in the Township Tale. What's that gonna look like? So we quickly concepted stuff, and I think we ended up getting it done in about a week and a half, like a working week and a half. So it's about 8 to 9 days, more like 8 days. 8 days, and we had the Phantom kind of already and completely playable, and then we were doing, we changed what they sound like, and we started doing a bit of polish work on them to make them a bit better, and we were actually able to iterate on the experience of the Phantoms a little bit. This year, we're not quite so lucky. Like I mentioned on the Discord, October kind of snuck up on us. We didn't allocate a schedule to try and work on the spooky feature this month. So, with forests, with climbing, and then with Joel moving on to housing, it just, we didn't want to pull Joel off housing for 2 to 3 weeks just because it's Halloween. It's too much of a rush job, and we Joel's on the break right now, so even then, just lots of things were coming up that just meant that it's not going to happen this year. However, in the future, for Township Tale, we're not going to be forced into releasing some of these more horror elements to the game. And by horror, I don't mean jump scary, terrifying, horror movie type of jump scare things. I mean more of kind of things that lie on the creepy side of the exploration spectrum. They're not going to be locked down to having to come out in October. It's awesome if they do, because it's everybody's in the mood for it. But because we do want it to be a bit to be involved in the experience of the game, they might come throughout the year. So if you're waiting for the next spooky thing to come out of a Township Tale, don't necessarily feel like you have to wait till next year. If all goes well and we can grow the team out, and we gain a bit more resources to get gameplay stuff flowing a bit more, I'd love to work on something spooky. And that depends a lot on how we go with some of the larger features that are a bit more mainstream. So horror is, in a lot of different genres that are divisive, can be considered a bit of a parallel part of the game experience. But something that we need to tackle first and foremost are all the mainstream things, and that's things like bosses and dungeons and more exploration. Um, those are things because those are things that everybody can do, and they're very much going to build the foundation of what exploring places with different genres can mean. So, on another point of the horror stuff, I want to talk a bit about let's talk a bit about the game design theory of what a horror experience would be within the game of a Township Tale. So, because it's a divisive point, divisive? Am I saying that right? Yeah. Because it's a divisive point, how you approach it can differ a lot. I'm not very good with horror games or horror movies at all. I'm not going to be scared of a Township Tale's horror because I'll probably have worked on it. I say that now, but I wonder if I can even. I wonder if it's possible. Like, I've been slightly spooked by the Phantom before, but I don't know if it's possible for me to be scared of something that I spent like hours drawing, modeling, and animating. Maybe it's still possible. Maybe I can create something so freaky that I'll be scared whilst I'm working on it. But if you are scared of horror games, and you are interested in this experience, because people are always tempted to kind of like see maybe the water's warm enough for me to go in there. Maybe this haunting experience is not scary enough that I can enjoy it as a person who's terrified of scary things. And that's definitely something that we kind of want to accommodate, is for someone who's not good at horror to kind of try and go at it. There's a big different dynamic with the Township Tale, and that's the sense that you'll very likely have all of your equipment, which is a big kind of coding of security that people feel like they have. You're going to be with your friends more than likely than not, or a few other people. The thing that differs there is how well your friends are at kind of staying around you and supporting you through this. I know when people wander through the mines, when they go to a lair, everybody kind of splits out. And I have read and heard that some people get a bit spooked when they go down into the mines, particularly alone. If you go alone, it's completely reasonable to be a little terrified. You've got a lot of equipment on you that's high stakes. You don't want to be caught off guard. And if it's your first time down there, you don't know what to expect. That portion, I think, is going to be very similar in the haunted parts. In this scenario, I'm talking within the context of like a dungeon or a biome. Dungeons are more interesting to think about because we can start to throw in like lots of crazy rules in it. So I hope that if you're bad with horror games, that you have friends that can help you through it. Because if you play the horror game with a friend, it becomes a much funnier experience because everybody, especially if they're high energy people, they're gonna run around screaming, and you're gonna be half laughing, half screaming, kind of like trying to push through your friends to get through the door. I think that's gonna be like a fun thing to have people kind of get chased through this environment like it's a Scooby-Doo or something. And as a developer, I like to think of it that it's a great opportunity for us to get you to group together and to separate you as well, so that this experience differs, and people having to reconnect to each other in this mansion is probably the biggest drive I think people will have. The things people are interested in generally are things like they're interested in treasure, and then they'll be interested in finding their friends. They'll be interested in progressing the dungeon, I suppose, as well. If you, I can think of lots of interesting mechanics that that can really amp up the fear. But a mechanic that we're going to be straying away from more so than not is jump scares. I think if a jump scare happens in the Township Tale, it's kind of coincidental. We didn't say that when you open this door, this creature is gonna kind of jump out and scare you. It's gonna be a bit more organic. And the way that I like to think about it is that a dungeon will be something like a sandbox, particularly horror dungeons, will be something like a sandbox that you go in, the environment has rules, the creatures in it have certain rules, and then they just exist in this space, and they're what builds up the scariness factor. It's the tension that's built from you having to interact with things, not knowing what's coming around, knowing that maybe something is kind of slowly or maybe rapidly chasing you through these halls. And there's it's interesting. A lot of horror games, they kind of remove any aspect of combat or the tools that you have to deal with it. You just have to hide, like in Amnesia, or like in, I guess in, what's the other one called? Penumbra. That one you fight a little bit. But there's a lot of games where, like Five Nights at Freddy's, if you consider that a real horror game, you don't have a weapon. When you're playing Silent Hill, you have weapons, but they're kind of not great. So it's going to be interesting to see how your equipment kind of plays a role in the dungeon, in the horror dungeon. An example is phantoms. You can't fight them unless you've got a way to materialize them. And I think to make a good horror dungeon that can't be nullified by all the tools that you can bring in, like if you come in equipped like a Ghostbuster, maybe there's still something you need to acquire in this dungeon that lets you kind of overcome the obstacles there, like a localized tool or resource of some kind, which kind of gives you an idea, I guess. I think listening to this, you might be able to formulate the type of dungeon that I'm talking about. And I like to do that so that your ideas get flowing and you can, get excited about it. Like one of the most exciting things to me about the horror dungeon aspect is the state of the game when we reach that point will be so tremendous because of all the mainstream parts of the gameplay content, and then there's these thematic portions. A lot of games do it as DLC, which I don't know how we would do that if we would ever do it. But yeah, so there is an aspect and there is room in the Township Tale because of how open world and how sandbox it is. And by sandbox, I mean both sandbox for you as the player as well as sandbox for us as developers to kind of try out these crazy game experiences that maybe kind of fringe on being like, you could segment this out and make a whole different game if you wanted to. But we chose to make it a part of the Township Tale world, and that's very much in line with what the game's about, by the way. It's something we've considered since the very beginning, and partially why the game is called the Township Tale. One of the original ideas we had was that we're not going to be telling, for the most part, a specific story or a narrative that has been constructed. Really, the game is about the story that you have in this town. That's why it's not the Township Tale, it's a Township Tale. Because your story is going to be one amongst many, and it's something diverse that you'll be able to tell people. I feel like I'm reiterating these words, but we kind of want you to tell, when you tell someone about what you did in the game, we want you to reimagine it in your mind as though you were there and living out these events. If you lived in a fantasy medieval world, it was like, I went down into the mines and I, used my hands to peer through like some vines, and I broke down some ores and dropped it, and then I had to like recraft a pickaxe from what I could find around the place. But then as I was doing that, I lost my teammates, and so on and so forth. There's a real narrative to tell there, and I think different genres can play a big role in that. Like, if you imagine pitching a Township Tale to your friend, and you're saying, I was playing Township Tale, and I was farming, and I was having a good time. We were making ale and brewing stuff with my friends. And then the day after, we went to like a haunted mansion, and we got chased by like the Phantom of the Opera or whatever. Like it just sounds crazy, and the individual actions that you'll be doing can change so much because fighting ghosts with swords and axes maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe there's a completely different tool set that you'll have to learn and experience on the go to overcome this. That's why I'm so interested in exploring what other genres can fit into a Township Tale, because that's very much going to be leading some of the future content of this game. I'd love to see your speculations on these concepts, or on this, coming off of this idea about what you can do. Some things that come to mind are, I just remembered an event idea that I had a while back that I think plays a similar role, but I don't want to get into it because I don't want to spoil it. But another one I suppose is the puzzle elements of the game. Puzzles, I suppose everything is a puzzle in a way. Like the horror mentioned will be a puzzle of its own. Then there'll be more mainstream puzzles that require maybe more logical thinking rather than kind of like connecting bits of what a horror dungeon would have. I suppose it would be more or less the same, but the feel and the mood of the individual places will differ. For puzzles, I always imagine something that will make you feel like you're in an Indiana Jones movie. And not in the sense that you're like always kind of avoiding these like kind of kitschy booby traps. There'll be more like the feeling of uncovering a mystery and understanding the rules of the place, executing them and coming up with creative solutions to do that. There's that scene at the start of Raiders where he's filling his bag with sand to replace the idol that the weight of the idol that he's placing on. That's something that it would be a super cool experience, is if you see this item that you have to retrieve, you suspect that there's a pressure plate underneath it, and then you need to kind of provide the same weight, but you don't know how heavy it is because you can't hold it, you can only look at it, so you have to estimate. And then you do that thing where you rub your rugged beard as you ponder the weight of it. It's a thing that I think can be very unique to VR. It's not something that you can do on a regular PC game, which I think is extra points for us to be interested in making it. And as the game progresses, I think we'll have so many of these different interactions that will be baffling. There's obviously a bit of a line to draw somewhere, particularly with things that are ultimately divisive. Like I think puzzles are on the safe side, horror a little less so. So maybe I mentioned this in one of the Altacast as well. I think I did. But things that we probably won't have is extreme gore is never going to be something we have. Like overly humanoid amputation, I don't think is something we'll have either. So really, when you're experiencing horror in a Township Tale, is this kind of fantastical horror. And it does mean that there will be things that may be very dark, almost grimy. But they're not going to be like, you're not going to be chased by like a guy with a chainsaw who murders people. We're not going to be that kind of horror. We're more so going to be maybe a bit more Lovecraftian, I guess. Something a little more cosmic and something that kind of makes you question the rules of the world and what does all of this mean. I've been seeing people speculate a lot in spoiler speculations and idea discussion about the story and the lore of the game. It's interesting to watch from my perspective because I know all of it. But I like the kind of discussions that are happening, and I think there's going to be more to talk about pretty soon. A quick bit of minor spoiler for everyone is that, well, I guess investigative spoiler, is that when the combat trials come out, you'll have a bit of an understanding of something new that you've never heard of before, that maybe some people suspected, but this will maybe confirm some suspicions that you might have about the way the game operates. Oh, I'm getting super hungry. Okay. Okay. What time? Okay, we're about 25 minutes in. God, yeah. Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna call this first section. I'm gonna cut it a bit short. I've been talking nonstop, so I think we can pretty much claim that I've talked more than when Joel and I both talk usually. Again, I want to I'd love to hear ideas about this. I'll be on Discord to talk about it, hopefully. Actually, will I? No, actually, I'm going back to Australia soon. Yeah, when this comes out, I'm going to be probably on the plane going home. So, yeah, let me know, when I come back, let me know your thoughts. I'll probably ask everybody about it. Be sure to leave it in the comments below. And then we're going to move on to the Q&A now, where I'll be answering some of your questions. And then that's the Altacast. Hopefully listening to me speak for 26 minutes has not been too much of a bore. And that you're as excited about the horror aspect of the game as I am. All right, we'll be right back. All right, and welcome back to the Altacast. This time I'll be answering your questions. We're starting the Q&A segment. Let me just adjust my mic without breaking it because it's been temperamental. All right, so okay. Again, I've mentioned I'm going to try to avoid. I'm going to leave the more house building related questions till later, towards the end, or not answer them because we covered a lot of them last Altacast. And maybe I'll quick fire some of them off at the end of this so that we can, if you're curious about it, you can read up that answer. Last time Joel and I only got through a few questions, so I'm going to try and be a bit faster today. Okay. Will armor have weight to it? And if armor is craftable, then will the weight be based on the materials? Yes. And yes. So armor will definitely have weight to it. The current design is that weight from armor is only going to be applied when you have it equipped, and it's only going to be equipped when you're going to be in combat. Part of the reason for that is how cosmetics versus armor is going to be balanced. To give you the short rundown of it is that the obstructing layers that would normally be on, that would obstruct with armor, like if you're wearing a wide brim hat, when you enter combat mode, it'll swap out to your helmet. But maybe the vest you're wearing, or maybe the face mask you're wearing underneath, that might still be around. So there's some of your cosmetics will keep, some of them won't. Obviously, if you don't wear a helmet, but I wear full plate everywhere else, you'll still have your hat be displayed. So it's this selective kind of changes for how armor will play. That's the way we currently see it. Weight will definitely be based on materials. Sorry, there was just a bit of an alarm. Weight will be based on the materials you've used, as well as the armor design that you're building. If we compare it to swords, the big heavy great sword is heavier than the small short sword because of the fact, but they're both blades, but they're obviously different in what they can output. So it's not just the materials, it's also the design. Will pets be able to assist with combat once they're added? Pets will most likely, pets will be able to assist in combat if they're a combatant pet, a combat capable pet. You might have maybe you have a rat as a pet, and maybe that rat can't fight at all, so it's never gonna fight. But maybe you can have a babu as a pet, and that babu will fight if it has an enemy that it can attack. So, yes, part of the reason why we don't want cosmetic pets is because we do want them to tie into gameplay a lot. This will become more clear, maybe sooner, maybe later. I'd like to think that people will understand our direction with the game pretty well, as the next few major features roll out, and it's really gonna kind of give more context as to why we've done these things. There's a lot of thought and deliberation that's gone into every mechanic, every idea that people have ever had And that's one of them. Will we ever be able to jump, or are we supposed to live with teleportation? So teleportation is a bit of a controversial thing. It's obviously, it exists as a comfort reason, so it doesn't exist to replace the jump. Particularly now that we don't have, particularly now that you can climb, but not everybody can climb, so that's not a real thing. Teleportation will stay a part of the game, most likely, maybe forever. What might happen though is that the more game mechanics kind of rely on us tracking your movement better and better, there may be more and more limitations that come with teleporting. And when that time comes, I think we're also going to be adding a jump feature when that happens. Because I know that as a smooth locomotion person, you don't ever want to teleport maybe because it for you to not ruin your immersion. But on the flip side, if you're a teleport only player, there are a lot of rules about the way the environment works that we need to not, like you being able to go from one spot to the next immediately needs to not be a thing. So I know there's a lot of solutions that other developers have done that we'll probably investigate ourselves to see how they fit with the game. Things like, I've seen kind of like people tracing out a shadow version of themselves, and that's something that can be susceptible to all of the environment effects. It's lots of different methods, all of which, the more complex it is, the worse it makes teleporting and the more immersive breaking it makes it. But I think for the sake of the gameplay, that might be the road we have to take on teleporting. No schedule on when that might happen. Okay, why is the table so easily breakable when spawned by us and yours immortal? The table that you're spawning is not a table that's meant for public consumption, so it doesn't see any kind of balancing. It's literally just a prototype that we did years ago now. A quick thing on that note, and I think I have said this before as well, we don't make assets in the game that are designed for you to spawn. The reason for that is it keeps us, I guess, not lazy with how we implement things. Like we don't want our development to all be about supporting server owners to make their servers different. We'd rather democratize some of the control that server owners have into game mechanics so that everybody can experience the fun of creating their own stuff, rather than feeling like everyone has to host their own server to be able to like have fun building stuff or be an admin of a server. Will blocking projectiles with a sword ever be a thing, or just with a shield? So what I mean is that will blocking projectiles with a sword be a thing, and I think you should be able to do it while your sword is charged or a new skill. There's actually nothing stopping us from making swords blockable. I do believe swords currently you can block Gotera darts with a sword. So it's not, yes. At least with the short sword that starts, like the one people call ironclad. It's more so of a design decision, because with a very large weapon, you can easily block stuff, maybe with more dexterity than you can a shield, and that's kind of it's not very constructive towards the function of shields. Something I would like for us to do at some point is improve how blocking is recognized by the game, so that we can provide a bit more variety with how shields behave. That might be something that we're going to explore in the relative short term. Will glass and flasks ever be craftable? Yes. So glasswork is definitely going to be a part of the game, and it will allow you to make different containers. It's likely that maybe it'll come with alchemy. I think if you've watched the alchemy Altacast, which I think is a thing that we've done, because we've done a lot of Altacasts now, we talk about how alchemy is going to be a bit more like chemistry. And so having different glasses and flasks be craftable at that point makes sense to me. Will you be able to climb on the ladders in the Hebios camps? Yes, so climbing lets you do that. Something that we're going to be experimenting with is people who haven't unlocked climbing to be able to do that as well. Climbing a ladder is not something that takes skill in our minds, so it might be kind of be the part of the exception to the rule of being able to climb everywhere. Because what's the like? It's too weird of an abstraction for us to say you can't climb this like device that was designed to make anybody be able to climb. Okay. Will we have metal handle crafting soon? And if so, will we be able to use colored strips to replace the default orange one on the handles currently? No, you will not be able to craft metal handles soon. Maybe after house building becomes a thing. Right now we like that carpentry is about making handles for yourself. That's one of the unique purposes that it has when it comes to the weapon creation process. And it's very likely that when we let you make metal handles that that process will still be involved. But we need to spend some time to elaborate on that a bit more. Will Stinger, the dashing sword skill, be re-added? Yes, at some point. Don't know when. Have you ever considered adding longer hair or different hair textures, curly, wavy, maybe even afros? So we do have different hair textures. We have dreadlocks, and kind of like a sharper-ish hair that is sometimes used. One of the dual tone haircuts in particular is using it, the one that's kind of parted. With really long hair, also our hair is always wavy. With longer hair, it's a matter of challenge with rigging and animation for it, which is the main reason we don't do it at the moment. It would be nice. I would love to have a bit more of a physics feel to hair, but not happening at the moment. Okay, we need some interesting questions now. Okay. Will cauldrons made of gold make rainbows? Maybe if you... I've never thought about this, so there's no plans whatsoever. A cool idea, I guess, is if you have a pot of gold, and when we have weather, if you see a rainbow, if you go to the rainbow and you put the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, maybe you get some stuff. I don't know, that sounds like a fun, like, global event, exploration type of thing. Will the death fur never drop something? Yes, one day we'll drop something when alchemy is a thing. I think we might have answered that. Maybe Joel didn't resolve it. I'll answer it again, whatever. Okay, did you ever think the game would fail since it's hard to get a lot of players into VR? And if so, when? I suppose that's the same question as, like, was I ever doubting the success of the game? We doubted it very early on, like probably in 2016, like when we first started. It was possible, but we knew that it was like a challenge that we could overcome. It wasn't something that was just like our fate rested in the hands of the world necessarily. We felt that we had the ability to help overcome that. It's part of the reason why the game is free. It's part of the game, part of the reason why we've worked in things in the order that we have. The first part of the game, we worked on mining and blacksmithing kind of as the first thing, and we did that because we knew that with those two things we had a technical game loop already closed, which meant that there was already a bit of a game there, and that people could go and do stuff. And then we kind of thought of it as like, okay, let's build around this more and more, so that way people have a game they can play, but then we can grow this out in a way that makes sense. Obviously, we're still waiting a bit on the end game process of that, where you have a larger reason to be using your weapons and such. But that's coming with housing, it's coming with combat trials, and it's going to come with proper procedural dungeons later. And, we're always kind of surprised, I guess, in some way about how, about the success we found so far and how it's going. So yeah, it's just next challenge after next challenge over and over again. And then we're pleasantly surprised when we overcome them. And when we don't, we just kind of try again. Would there ever be a more involved cartography system, drawing maps and using pins? Yes, there will be. Joel and I have talked about that. We've talked about how we will play a role. I think we started speccing it properly as well. So we have a good idea of it. And that's probably when, people wonder when the map boards are going to get updated, because they haven't been. It'll probably be when this happens, because it'll be more advanced technology that makes it easier for us to iterate on the map. Right now, making map boards is such a custom handwork that it's not super worth it for us at the moment. Will you be making ball bearings / bullets, aka little metal spheres, or bags of caltrops to act as a projectile weapon for slingshots? Potentially. I always liked the idea of slingshots being more of a utility tool in being able to provide different effects beyond just straight damage, which is partly the reason why I haven't made them. Like, technologically speaking, we can easily very much make them, but we want to let slingshots kind of sit as this specialized ammo type of thing before we ever go into damage, because it's not unique enough of a thing to just be able to fire damage. Like, why not use a bow at that point? Are we going to have more hair, eyelashes, faces, body types, noses, eyes, maybe even able to color our nails or paint our face and do tattoos at any point? Yeah, we release hair and eyelashes. We're not going to be releasing body types. We will be releasing noses and maybe eyes, but body types is not something we're going to release as cosmetics. If we have more body types, they'll just be free by default, because it's kind of just like, if you want to look a certain way, like, we don't want you paying for it. Like, if you feel like you identify with that more. Faces might also be something that might also not be monetized when we have different face shapes, just because it's we're not going to be that extreme with it, and I don't think we ever want to value that. I guess, like, put a price tag on it. It seems a bit weird. Okay. Do all old cosmetics get brought back, or do some never return? Almost all of them get brought back. The only one that doesn't return is the supporter belt that people received before the cosmetic store ever released. So let me rephrase that. People received a special belt if they had supported before it released the store, because before that they were not getting anything. They were just supporting for the sake of supporting us, and as a thank you for that, we gave them this item. That's the only item that will likely never return. Will you support Oculus hand tracking at some point? Assuming you mean, like, so we have the kind of like open gesture thing with Oculus Quest controllers, but I'm assuming that they mean like Oculus Rift controller, sorry, but I'm assuming they mean Oculus Quest, like finger control. Perhaps, but it's not quite sharp enough, I think, that you want to be able to use it all the time. It's like, because we have used it, and it's a little too like soft, I guess. Like, you can't really do extreme motions with it. So it probably won't have too much function. What's the best place to send ideas / suggestions? The best place to send ideas and suggestions is feedback.townshiptale.com. It's like this discourse hosted website, and you can log in using your Alta account, and it pretty much acts like a forum when we have feedback, bugs, ideas, tips. I think is another topic, but that's where you can really elaborate on stuff. People can respond to it, they can upvote it. So there's a really good place for us to kind of sort through things and find out what people like the most. It's where we've gone to looking for bugs whenever we're going through like a bug fixing stint. So I recommend checking it out and going on there if you are interested in having a really well formatted way of speaking to us. Why has forest content development been pretty much halted? So our goal with the forest development is that we don't really want you to have to wipe your forest too often. Maybe it's something that people are already doing constantly because they want a fresh forest. I'm not sure. But we are focusing on these larger updates, and we have to make sure that they provide the next bit about what Forest is going to provide is kind of going to play into that difficulty thing that we talked about in the last Altacast. So, like, yeah, there's a bit of a bit of this next big chunk of like adventuring update that has to come out. Trials, the combat trials. I'm gonna have to beep that out in post. I call them with something that maybe I shouldn't have spoiled yet. The combat trials are kind of the first foray into that. They were supposed to come out a bit earlier. We've been wanting to get them out for a long time, so that's why they're happening. After that, though, besides housing, more forest-related stuff is going to be worked on. Okay, when will jumping be added to the game? I've already answered that. New colors to character customization. Maybe not. So this person says whether it be die packs purchased from the store or gained from certain task achievements. I think achievements is a cool idea, a cool way of doing this actually. There's no. There may be new colors added to character customization. We'll change up the UI to support it. We feel a bit weird about buying colors. It feels like such a strange thing that you have to pay for. So maybe once we have like an achievement type system, maybe yeah. Can we get a guide rope to lead other people coming later to an area, a safe path? Yeah, so I'm imagining something kind of like a rope that you kind of chain between poles. That is a mechanic that we've thought about and have somewhat planned. The reason why it's not happening yet is because we don't have a it doesn't really fit like a straight profession or like a big adventuring thing. It's kind of just like a tool that you can use. So it doesn't, unfortunately, and things like that end up a bit low on the priority list. Okay. What was your favorite moment watching people do the climbing tower? So the first time people, like I was watching people go through the tower when they first came in. That was an interesting thing to see. Nail biting for me because I designed the tower and I wanted to see how people responded to it. When they first started, everyone was clustered around the first leap. And the first leap was there because it was there because you had to learn how to get over it. If you didn't know how to get over that, you would struggle so hard throughout the rest of the challenge. So that was something that we wanted to get people aware of. Seeing people overcome that and understand it was a big yes moment for me. And I think the most satisfying thing was watching people like becoming experts at it, like the process of everyone that's doing speed runs at the moment, seeing their evolution, seeing the evolution of someone who was. So there's two ways that people really climb. Either people jump a lot, like they do the big cross sweeps to jump and make the gaps, or people kind of push themselves to stand on the surface and then run off and then catch themselves onto the next hold. That's a little watching people transition from doing the run and catch to the straight leaps is nice to see because there's people growing better and better at this mechanic. Okay. Let me just. Yes. Okay. Can you add some theft protection to the community storage materials similar to the anti-theft system that blacksmithing molds have? The example here is someone taking gold from the storage case and then putting it into their log boxes, I presume. So that's an interesting idea, I suppose, of forcing people to use the ingots at the location rather than take them anywhere. There might be, like, it's possible that we add something like that, and that would likely be a server setting similar to the community storage limits. It might be a server setting that we allow people to mess with, and maybe it's something that our public servers will have as well. I'm not sure yet. It's not a bad idea though. Okay, let me see if I missed any that are no. Okay, we still have a bit of time. Look at that, 6 minutes, so we can talk a bit about housing. Okay, will there be an option for multiple people to share a house when house building comes out? Yes, there will be. So there's a portion of house building that's likely going to involve a ownership and delegation system. They kind of, says who you trust, who you're like. Maybe it's not all of your friends. Maybe it's only certain people that you provide access to. I know a lot of people will treat the housing like a base of operations, and people might want to live together. So there's going to be a similar structure to owners, I guess, where you have the owner, then you have like admins within it, maybe like mods or something. Like maybe we can even let you tier it up. All of which is going to be a very meta interaction, so it's going to be interesting to see how we deal with that. But I think so far, it's still early in housing development, but we're hoping to have that mechanic supported when housing rolls out to everyone. And it might control like who can take stuff out from furniture that's stored there, who can open doors, who can open the house in the first place. Whether or not people can get in at all might be another thing that we control. I think I'd like for us to err on the side of making houses very safe to begin with, and then looking at ways to make any kind of PvP potential better, if any. Will there be one house for everyone where you teleport into it, or will there be limited housing per server? So we've last Altacast we mentioned it's going to be plot based, so it's all going to be in the world, which means limited housing per server. When player housing becomes a thing, do you plan on adding new ways of cooking that can be done in these houses? I don't think cooking is really going to be tied to housing that much. The thing that's making us not do cooking yet is the fact that we want more reasons to cook different things. Right now we could add 1,000 different meats and 1,000 different grains that are just like random things that you have, but they're all going to serve more or less the same purpose. So cooking is going to play a role in a lot of immunization for the environment, and so what we're waiting for before we do cooking are these environment hazards that force you to cook to overcome them. And I think there was at least one more somewhere. Okay, no, I think that's actually it was only a couple of house questions, sorry. All right, well, this is a bit of a shorter Altacast. I suppose it may out of focus a little bit. Bit of a shorter Altacast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope listening to me talk all day wasn't too bad. I've answered almost every question on here, so be sure to drop some more questions in the link below. And yeah, that's it. Or something exciting I can end on. I don't have anything. I got nothing. Let me think. Suppose a note I can leave you on. Maybe I've said this before as well. I'm losing track of everything I've ever said. There's too many Altacasts now. There's going to be a portion of housing that's going to mean you need to develop certain technologies that will aid you in the process. And that probably what's going to make housing a nice kind of fun problem solving experience for people who are interested in it. That's all I'll say for now. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.